The night sky over the Mojave Desert was ablaze with stars, each one a silent witness to the solitude of the vast, open landscape. It was here, under this celestial canopy, that Dr. Jack Mitchell and his colleague, Dr. Eric Saunders, were camped out near their makeshift observatory, a high-tech array of telescopes and sensors aimed at the heavens. "Jack, you've got to see this," Eric called out, his voice tinged with excitement. Jack, who'd been reviewing data on his laptop, looked up. The air was crisp, and his breath formed small clouds as he spoke. "What is it?" Jack asked, walking over to where Eric stood before a large monitor displaying live feed from their telescopes. "Look at this anomaly. It's not a satellite, and it's definitely not any known celestial body," Eric explained, pointing at a rapidly moving object on the screen. Jack leaned in, his eyes narrowing in concentration. The object was moving towards Earth at an incredible speed, and it was closing in fast. "Are we recording this?" "Every second." "This could be the big one, Jack." As they watched, the object slowed, stabilizing over the desert just a few miles from their location. It was then that the shape became clearer, an enormous, sleek vessel, unlike anything human-made. "This is it, Eric." "First contact," Jack whispered, his heart racing. They wasted no time. Grabbing their gear, they hopped into their jeep and drove towards the landing site. The alien vessel touched down silently, a marvel of technology and elegance. It was then that a hatch opened, and a figure emerged, backlit by the interior lights of the ship. Jack and Eric approached cautiously, their hands raised in peace. The alien was tall, humanoid, but with skin that shimmered like the surface of a pearl. "Welcome to Earth," Jack said, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "I'm Dr. Jack Mitchell, and this is Dr. Eric Saunders. We mean you no harm." The alien nodded, its movements graceful and deliberate. "I am Serena of the Illyrian. I come in peace. We need your help." Eric looked at Jack, both men processing the weight of her words. "What kind of help?" Jack asked. Serena paused, her gaze sweeping across the horizon before settling back on the two men. "My people, the Illyrians, we are facing a crisis. 7 million of our females are in their mating season, a critical phase for our survival. We seek partners from different gene pools. Earth has been chosen for a cultural exchange." Jack exchanged a glance with Eric. The implications were enormous, and the responsibility heavy. "Why us?" he asked. "Our scouts have observed Earth for cycles. Your species' diversity, your capacity for empathy and connection, makes you ideal," Serena explained. "Will you help us?" Jack looked at the alien, then at Eric, who nodded slightly. "We need to discuss this with our leaders, but we will do everything we can to help," Jack assured her. Serena smiled, a universal sign of gratitude. "Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Saunders. You won't regret this." As they walked back to their vehicle, the weight of the night seemed a little lighter. This was a turning point, not just for them, but for all of humanity. The stars above, once distant and cold, now seemed to twinkle with a promise of new beginnings. Chapter 2. The Cultural Exchange. The morning after the arrival, Jack and Eric convened with government officials and other scientific experts in a secure location in Washington, D.C. The meeting room was a flurry of activity, with advisors whispering and officials consulting tablets filled with data. Jack stood at the front beside Eric, ready to present their initial findings and the conversation they had with Serena, the Illyrian representative. As the room settled, the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Alan Grant, gestured for silence. "Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Saunders, please begin," Grant said, his tone serious but curious. Jack cleared his throat, adjusting the microphone before him. "Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Last night, We made contact with an extraterrestrial species known as the Illyrians. They've come with a proposition that involves a cultural exchange aimed at addressing a critical phase in their species' life cycle, their mating season. Murmurs filled the room, a mixture of astonishment and skepticism. Jack handed over to Eric, who continued, "The Illyrians have chosen Earth for this exchange because they believe our genetic diversity and emotional capacity are compatible with their needs." "What exactly are they asking from us?" asked General Martinez, leaning forward with furrowed brows. "They seek human partners for their females to ensure the survival of their species through varied gene pool integration," Jack explained, anticipating the wave of questions. "And what do we get in return?" a diplomat from the State Department inquired. Serena, who had been granted permission to attend the meeting, stepped forward. "We offer knowledge, advancements in technology, medicine, and energy that far exceed your current understanding." The room quieted, the offer tempting yet fraught with implications. Jack noted the hesitancy and added, "There's much to consider, including the ethical and logistical aspects. But the potential for mutual benefit is substantial." Mr. Grant nodded. "We'll need to set up a task force. Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Saunders, you're on it. We need to understand their culture and what this partnership would entail practically and ethically." Jack and Eric agreed, and as the meeting adjourned, they were approached by Dr. Henry Liu, an expert in cross-cultural relations, and Dr. Marcus Lee, a geneticist. Both expressed their interest in joining the task force. Over the next few days, Jack, Eric, Henry, and Marcus worked closely with Serena and other Illyrians who had joined her. They held sessions on Earth's cultures and languages, which Serena absorbed quickly. In a makeshift conference room, Henry initiated a discussion. "Serena, could you explain more about how these partnerships would work? What are the social norms we should be aware of?" Serena projected images from a device, illustrating Illyrian social structures and rituals. "In our culture, bonding is both a physical and intellectual connection. It starts with a mutual understanding and respect, followed by a ceremonial bond that is celebrated among our people." Marcus scribbled notes, then asked, "And genetically? What should we know about compatibility and reproduction?" "Our biology is compatible with yours to an extent that prevents any risk of adverse outcomes. Any offspring would be healthy, partaking in both species traits," Serena explained, her tone reassuring. As they delved deeper into discussions, Jack and his team were not just formulating a plan, but were also building bridges of trust, understanding, and a tentative friendship. The task was daunting, yet the more they learned, the more they realized the enormity of the opportunity before them. By the end of the week, the initial wariness had given way to a cautious optimism. They had begun to sketch out a detailed plan of action, ready to present it to international leaders. "This is a leap into the unknown," Jack said one evening as they all looked over their notes. "But it's also a chance for monumental growth. For all of us." Nods of agreement echoed around the room, the task force unified in their mission. Tomorrow, they would step back into the conference room, this time with a proposal that might just change the world. Chapter 3. The Proposal. The following morning, the atmosphere in the high-security conference room was charged with a palpable sense of expectation. The world's leaders had gathered, either in person or via secure video links, to hear the proposal developed by Jack, Eric, and their expanded task force. Jack began the briefing with a clear, authoritative tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for convening at such short notice. Today, we present a proposal for an unprecedented cultural exchange with the Illyrian civilization. This is not just about survival for their species. It's an opportunity for significant advancements in our own realms of science and technology." A prominent world leader raised a hand, signaling for more details. "Dr. Mitchell, can you elaborate on the nature of this exchange? What are the terms?" Eric took over, clicking to a slide showing a detailed outline of the proposal. Each volunteer from Earth would engage in a partnership with an Illyrian for a period of 1 year. In exchange, the Illyrians will share knowledge and technology that could advance our capabilities in medicine, energy, and more. Dr. Marcus Lee added, "We've ensured that the health and rights of all participants will be protected. Extensive medical and psychological support will be provided throughout." The room buzzed with whispers as the implications sank in. A leader from the European delegation spoke up. And the social implications? How do we address the potential concerns of our citizens? Henry Liu responded smoothly. "We have prepared a comprehensive cultural sensitivity training program. Plus, ongoing support and education campaigns will be implemented to ensure a smooth integration and understanding of Illyrian customs." Mr. Grant looked towards Serena, who had been silently observing the proceedings. "And what assurances do we have from the Illyrians? How do we ensure this partnership is respected on both sides?" Serena stood, her presence commanding attention. "We are committed to this partnership. Our Council has agreed to all terms discussed, including third-party monitoring and conflict resolution mechanisms. We view this as a bridge to a lasting friendship." The Russian delegate looked skeptical. "What about the risk of cultural contamination or unwanted dependencies?" Jack addressed the concern directly. "That's a valid point. To mitigate this, the exchange will be constantly evaluated by an independent panel of experts from both Earth and Illyria. Adjustments will be made as needed." The discussion continued, with technical questions handled by Eric and Marcus, while Jack and Henry focused on the broader strategic and cultural implications. After several hours, the mood in the room had shifted from cautious to tentatively optimistic. As the meeting drew to a close, the Secretary-General of the United Nations took the floor. "This proposal represents a leap of faith for all of us. It's an opportunity to not only help a new friend, but to learn and grow beyond our current limitations." The proposal was put to a vote, and after a tense moment, it was approved with a significant majority. The room erupted into a mix of applause and murmurs, a historic decision made. As the delegates began to disperse, Jack and his team gathered around Serena. "We did it," Jack said, relief and satisfaction evident in his voice. Serena smiled, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and hope. "Indeed, you have opened your world to us, and soon we will share ours with you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Saunders, and all who have worked tirelessly on this." The task force felt a collective sense of accomplishment, but they knew the real work was just beginning. The coming days would be filled with preparations for the first group of Earth volunteers who would step forward into this new interstellar relationship. As they left the conference room, Eric clapped Jack on the back. "Ready to start the next chapter, Jack?" "More ready than ever," Jack replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon of possibilities that now lay before them. Chapter 4. The Understanding. Weeks had passed since the agreement was ratified, and the Illyrian Cultural Center had been established just outside of San Francisco. It was a sprawling complex designed to facilitate not only the living accommodations for the Illyrians, but also the exchange of knowledge and cultural integration that was central to the partnership. Jack and Eric, along with other members of the task force, including Dr. Marcus Lee and Dr. Henry Liu, were now regulars at the center, working closely with the Illyrians to ensure a smooth transition. On a bright Tuesday morning, Jack and Marcus walked through the center's garden, a space designed by Illyrian landscape architects that combined elements of their world with Earth's nature. "So, how do you think we're doing so far?" Jack asked Marcus, looking around at the peaceful setting. "It's going better than I anticipated," Marcus replied. "Our teams have been very receptive, and from what I can see, the Illyrians are quite comfortable here." As they spoke, an Illyrian named Don joined them. He was part of the environmental exchange program, working with Earth scientists to share knowledge about sustainable technologies. "Good morning, Jack, Marcus." Don greeted them with a nod. "I was just about to review the new water purification technology we discussed. Would you care to join me?" "Absolutely," Marcus responded enthusiastically. They followed Don to a nearby laboratory where a small prototype was set up. Meanwhile, Eric and Henry were in a conference room with Serena and 2 other Illyrians, planning the next set of workshops. Eric flipped through the digital slides on the screen. These sessions on emotional intelligence and cultural sensitivities are crucial. "Serena, do you think the topics cover enough ground?" Serena examined the slides carefully. "Yes, but I believe we should add more on nonverbal communication. Much of our interaction is through body language, which can be quite different from humans." Henry took notes, nodding in agreement. "That's a great point. We'll incorporate a session on that. It's important everyone understands these nuances to avoid any misinterpretation." Back in the lab, Don demonstrated the water purification system. This system uses a combination of Illyrian biofiltration techniques and Earth's chemical processes. It's more efficient and less harmful to the environment. Jack was impressed. This could really change things for water-scarce regions around the world. "Yes, that's the plan," Don replied. "We hope to begin field tests by next month." As the day progressed, more interactions like these unfolded across the center. The Earth representatives and their Illyrian counterparts were not only exchanging knowledge, but were also forming friendships, bridging the gap between their worlds through shared goals and mutual respect. In the evening, Jack and the team gathered in the communal dining area with the Illyrians. Over dinner, they discussed everything from food preferences to music, each learning from the other. "It's fascinating," Jack mused aloud, "how much we can find in common, despite being from different galaxies." "Yes, it is," Serena agreed, smiling. "And it's only the beginning. We have much to learn from each other." As dinner wrapped up, Eric stood to make a toast. "To new friends and new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. The room echoed with voices in unison, "To new beginnings." As they all cheered, Jack felt a profound sense of connection. This exchange was more than just a mission. It was the foundation of a deep and lasting alliance. As the Illyrians and humans laughed and shared stories, it was clear that understanding was the real key to their successful collaboration. Chapter 5. The Bond. As the partnership between humans and Illyrians deepened, the bonds formed began to extend beyond mere professional collaboration. One bright Saturday morning at the Cultural Center, Jack and Eric, along with their new Illyrian friends, Don and another scientist named Rail, decided to engage in a more personal cultural exchange. They planned a trip to one of the local nature reserves. "Ever been hiking, Don?" Jack asked as they packed their gear into the car. Don, adjusting his lightweight thermal jacket, a gift from his Earth counterparts, shook his head. "We don't have much rugged terrain on Illyria like you do here. I'm eager to experience it." Rail, more reserved but just as curious, added, "I've read about Earth's ecosystems. It will be enlightening to see one firsthand." The drive to the reserve was filled with light conversation about each species' home environments and the conservation efforts on both planets. Upon arrival, the group embarked on a trail that wound its way through towering redwoods. The conversation turned to the similarities and differences in their respective biologies. Eric, leading the group, pointed to a cluster of wildflowers. "We have something similar on Illyria," Rail noted, kneeling to examine them closer. "But our flora usually thrives in lower light." "Fascinating how life adapts," Marcus commented, who had joined to help bridge any gaps in the scientific dialogue. As they reached a clearing, the group paused to rest. Jack took the opportunity to delve deeper into personal connections. It's not just our plants that need to adapt. We're all learning how to connect on more than just a professional level. Don nodded in agreement. It's true. I was skeptical at first about how deep our bonds could go, given our differences. But being here, sharing experiences, it changes perspectives. Rail, looking out over the vista, shared a thought. Back home, it's often said that true understanding comes from shared experiences. This, he gestured around, is a perfect example. Jack smiled, feeling a genuine connection forming. Exactly. It's about more than just survival or technology. It's about building relationships. The conversation continued as they made their way back down the trail. By the time they returned to the center, the group was laughing and sharing personal stories, a sign of their growing friendship. That evening, back at the center, Jack and Eric organized an informal gathering in the communal lounge. Earth and Illyrian participants alike shared music from their cultures. Don introduced a traditional Illyrian instrument, similar to a harp. It sounds ethereal and soothing. Jack took a turn, playing a few classic Earth songs on his guitar. The music blended into the night, a symbolic merging of their cultures. As the evening wound down, Jack pulled Eric aside. Today was a good day. Not just for our project, but for us as a team. Eric nodded, watching the mingling crowd. It's these moments that truly build trust and respect. They're as important as any formal meeting or agreement. The night ended with promises to organize more such exchanges, each participant now more comfortable and open with their counterparts. As they left the lounge, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bonds they were forming here weren't just fulfilling the terms of a cultural exchange. They were laying the groundwork for a lasting friendship between two very different, yet increasingly interconnected, worlds. Chapter 6. The Challenge. As the exchange program progressed, the challenge of navigating the delicate intricacies of Illyrian mating rituals became a central focus. Jack and Eric met early one morning in the main conference room at the Cultural Center to discuss this very topic with a group of selected Earth volunteers who had agreed to participate in the more personal aspects of the cultural exchange. "Good morning, everyone," Jack began, addressing the room where both humans and Illyrians were gathered. "Today, we're going to discuss something that's critical to our friends from Illyria, their mating rituals. This is delicate, and we need to handle it with the utmost respect and sensitivity." Eric chimed in. "We've brought in Dr. Sarah Benson, a cultural anthropologist, to help guide our understanding and approach." "Dr. Benson." Sarah stepped forward, her presence calming. "Thank you, Jack, Eric. Let's start with the basics. Illyrian mating rituals are not just physical, but deeply emotional and spiritual. They involve ceremonies that are both private and communal." Don, the Illyrian who had become quite familiar with Earth customs, added, "That's correct. Our bonds are formed based on emotional resonance before they become physical. The first step is always verbal consent, followed by a ceremonial exchange of gifts symbolizing the union." Rail, who was more reserved, spoke up. "It's about finding harmony in each other's presence. We start with simple gestures, holding hands, eye contact, speaking truths. It's more about understanding the heart and mind than anything else." Jack nodded, absorbing the information. It's very different from human customs, where physical attraction often precedes emotional connection. We need to respect their process and proceed with caution and genuine intent. One of the volunteers, a young man named Tom, raised a hand. "How do we prepare for this? It sounds intense." Sarah smiled reassuringly. "It is, Tom, but that's why we're here, to prepare you. We'll start with workshops on non-verbal communication, empathy building, and Illyrian customs." Eric added, "And it's not just about the rituals. You're entering into a partnership that the Illyrians take very seriously. It's a profound commitment and should be entered into with both your head and your heart in the right place. The group spent the rest of the day engaged in these workshops. Illyrians and humans paired up to practice the initial steps of the Illyrian bonding process. Jack watched as Tom tentatively held hands with an Illyrian named Lyra, both of them practicing maintaining eye contact and exchanging soft-spoken words in both English and the Illyrian language. As the session ended, Jack pulled Eric aside. "Do you think they're ready for this? It's a lot more complex than I thought." Eric watched the volunteers chatting amicably with their Illyrian partners. "They're getting there. It's about building trust, and from what I can see, we're on the right path." The following weeks were a testament to the efforts of both the humans and Illyrians. They continued their sessions, each meeting bringing them closer to understanding and respecting the profound cultural differences between them. One evening, as the sun set over the center, Jack joined a group of Illyrians and humans sharing a meal outside. The atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and shared stories. "It's working, Eric. Look at them," Jack said, gesturing towards the group. Eric nodded, a look of satisfaction on his face. "It's more than just an exchange now. It's a fusion of worlds, a real synthesis of cultures." As they watched the sunset, the challenges they had faced seemed to diminish in the light of their achievements. They had navigated a complex cultural landscape and emerged not just unscathed but enriched. The true challenge had been understanding, and they had met it head-on. Chapter 7. The Acceptance. As the exchange program neared its completion, the bonds formed between humans and Illyrians had deepened into genuine relationships that transcended their initial purposes. A festive atmosphere had settled over the cultural center, as both species prepared to celebrate the successful end of the mating season with a joint ceremony. Jack, Eric, and their Illyrian counterparts, Don and Rael, met in the conference room to discuss the final preparations for the ceremony. "We need to ensure that everything we've planned respects both our cultures," Jack stated, reviewing the checklist on his tablet. Eric nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. The music, the food, the rituals, everything has been chosen to symbolize our unity and mutual respect." Don, who had been instrumental in blending the Illyrian rituals with human customs, added, "The ceremony will begin with the Illyrian Song of Harmony, followed by a series of human readings on friendship and partnership." Rael, always more focused on the details, chimed in, "And don't forget the exchange of the ceremonial gifts. Each pair, Illyrian and human, will present their gifts to symbolize the bonds they've formed." The group continued to discuss logistics, from seating arrangements to the multimedia presentations that would document their journey over the past months. As they finalized the details, the conversation turned reflective. "It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?" Eric mused, looking around at his friends. "Yes, it has," Jack replied. "I think we've all changed a bit through this experience." Don smiled. "Changed for the better, I believe. The understanding and acceptance we've achieved are more than I hoped for." The day of the ceremony arrived, clear and bright. The outdoor area of the cultural center had been transformed into a beautifully decorated venue, blending earthly floral arrangements with Illyrian luminescent sculptures. As the ceremony began, Jack stood beside Serena, who had become not just an ambassador but a dear friend. Together, they watched as each pair of partners approached the stage, exchanging tokens of their respect and friendship. Tom and Lyra, who had been one of the first pairs to form a bond, stepped onto the stage. Tom presented Lyra with a beautifully crafted model of the solar system, the planets orbiting a small sun. In return, Lyra gave Tom a traditional Illyrian cloak, woven from threads that shimmered in the sunlight. The audience, a mix of humans and Illyrians, applauded warmly, moved by the symbolism and the genuine affection evident between the pairs. After the ceremony, The celebration moved to a communal dinner, where laughter and music filled the air. Jack and Eric mingled with the guests, their hearts full. "This went beyond science and survival," Eric commented as he watched the festivities. Jack nodded, his gaze lingering on the happy faces around him. "It did. It went right to the heart of what it means to connect, to truly accept each other." As the evening wound down, Jack found himself standing next to Serena, looking up at the stars that had brought their two species together. "Thank you, Jack, for everything," Serena said, her voice warm. "It was our pleasure, our honor," Jack replied. "I think we've started something wonderful here, Serena." "Yes, a friendship that will last generations," she agreed, her eyes reflecting the starlight. The celebration ended with a final, quiet moment of unity as all attendees held hands, forming a large circle that symbolized the unbroken bond between Earth and Illyria. As they released hands, Jack felt a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. The challenges they had faced had led to this moment of acceptance and friendship, a true union of worlds. And as the guests slowly dispersed, the echoes of laughter and music lingered, a testament to the lasting bonds they had all forged. Chapter 8. The Future. As the celebrations wound down and the night deepened, Jack, Eric, Don, and Rael gathered in the quiet of the now empty main hall of the cultural center. The remnants of the day's joy hung in the air, mingling with a sense of bittersweet closure as they all realized the formal part of their exchange was ending. "Hard to believe it's almost over, isn't it?" Jack said, picking up a discarded garland and twirling it between his fingers. "It is," Eric agreed, leaning back against a table. "But the end of the program doesn't mean the end of what we've started here." Don nodded thoughtfully. "The bonds we've formed, they are just the beginning. Tomorrow we start planning the next phase, the integration of Illyrian technology with Earth systems, and perhaps a return visit to Illyria for some of you." Rael, always more introspective, added, "The exchange has opened many doors. We have much to learn from each other still. Our leaders are already discussing future collaborations." Jack smiled, his mind racing with possibilities. "I was thinking about that. We should set up a permanent liaison office here, and one on Illyria. Keep the lines of communication open." "That's a great idea," Eric said. "Continuity is key, and with the tech insights we've gained, there's going to be a lot of work ahead." Don looked between the two humans, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "I would like to be involved in that. My experience here has been profound. I understand humans better now, and I think I can help bridge our worlds even more effectively." "We'd be lucky to have you continue working with us," Jack replied, clapping Don on the shoulder. "What about you, Rael? What are your plans going forward?" Rael's eyes lit up with a clear vision. "I wish to contribute to our shared environmental projects. There is much your planet can teach us about ecological conservation, and with our technology, I believe we can make significant strides together." The conversation flowed into the early hours, each man laying out his hopes and plans for the future, discussing how the partnership could evolve and expand. Finally, Eric stood, stretching. "I think we've got some solid ideas to take back to our respective governments. Let's get some rest and start fresh tomorrow. We've got a lot of work to do." They all agreed, and as they left the hall, Jack looked back at the room one last time, feeling a profound connection to everything that had happened there. The next morning, Jack met with global leaders via secured video conference, presenting the plans for ongoing cooperation with Illyria. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many leaders expressing their commitment to supporting the new interstellar relationship. As the meeting concluded, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He and Eric walked back to their office, discussing the immediate next steps. "We'll need to assemble a team for the liaison office," Jack said, jotting down notes. "Already on it," Eric replied, showing Jack a list of candidates. and I've scheduled a meeting with engineering leads to discuss integrating Illyrian energy systems. The pace was brisk, the work demanding, but both men were energized by the challenges ahead. As they parted ways for the day, Jack felt optimistic about the future. Standing outside the cultural center, he gazed up at the sky, thinking of the Illyrian friends now heading back to their home planet. The stars seemed closer now, less like points of light and more like destinations within reach. "Here's to the future," Jack murmured to himself, a future that was brighter than ever, filled with possibilities and the promise of two civilizations growing together, learning from each other, and moving forward into a shared destiny.